Welcome to the Cosmic Chosen Channel. A crown can be stolen, but the bloodline? That's encrypted. And you, Chosen One, are the key they tried to bury. While others paraded in borrowed robes and sat on stolen thrones, your real mother, the one who carried your divine code, has been watching in silence, not because she was absent, but because divine timing required divine concealment. They used your name to build palaces, your destiny to gain power, and your essence to buy time they were never meant to have. But spiritual credit has an expiration date, and it just ran out. More than 75% of high-ranking figures quietly confess to feeling like imposters. Now imagine how many of them truly are. They forged paths with your blueprint, wore your legacy like a costume, and still couldn't replicate your energy. Because stolen inheritance doesn't last. It fractures. And now, those empires built on your delay are collapsing under cosmic audit. Your mother, the true source, never needed applause. She needed alignment. And now, you're waking up. You were never overlooked. You were being guarded, because heaven never lets the understudy keep the crown. And now, the throne remembers who it belongs to, and so does she. Let's get started, shall we? First, there is a price for spiritual dishonesty. What wasn't theirs is never kept by the thief. A person who takes something that was never intended for them, particularly something holy like destiny, does not escape punishment. Instead, they are subject to the associated curse. When someone manipulates their way into a position or a blessing that is intended for someone else, they believe they have won. However, from a spiritual standpoint, that type of stealing is a transgression rather than merely an error. And there are repercussions for infractions. Everything that is yours has a special mark, a heavenly code, like a spiritual fingerprint, that is. No matter how convincing they make it appear, no one else can wear it properly. They can mimic your voice, your mannerisms, and even your movements, but they can't replicate your core personality. Therefore, even when it appears that they have stolen something from you, they have actually borrowed poison and covered it with glitter. There is a catch, you see. Destiny is about alignment, not simply ownership. It will ultimately crush you if you're not positioned to bear it. And those who stole what was rightfully yours are experiencing just that. In the process of attempting to maintain something they were never made to support, they are losing chances, relationships, tranquility, sleep, and favor. Because they entered a conflict for which they were not prepared the instant they entered your zone. Your inheritance came with a spiritual burden they weren't designed to bear, even if it appeared to be a prize. The fact that some individuals didn't simply get fortunate is something that most people won't openly admit. They gained entry by spiritual trickery, deceit, and manipulation. The cosmos, however, never forgets. Heaven retains receipts. Boomeranging is what was taken. First, possibilities dry up slowly. Support systems break. Their names no longer have the same impact. Then, suddenly, you don't need to do anything. Their own demise was triggered by the heist. They triggered a curse rather than merely stealing a gift. And you were actually being preserved the entire time you believed you were losing. Second, karma waits till the spotlight is on and doesn't miss. It's never too late. But karma isn't always loud. It remains silent when others steal things that aren't theirs, play dirty, and chuckle as if they got away with it. However, karma is cruel because it waits until they have established their own kingdom, are surrounded by admirers, and are certain that they have gained your position. Then it strikes, not in solitude or in the dark, but while everyone is cheering and the lights are on. Because karma exposes rather than merely corrects. The individuals who took your opportunities, ideas, and inheritance believed they were being clever. Silence, they believed, equaled safety. Your absence was interpreted by them as weakness. They persuaded others that they deserved the things they gained via manipulation. And it worked for a time. They were unaware, however, that every stolen step was captured on camera. No one can outwit the spiritual rules that are at work. Now, the seeds they sowed in deceit are sprouting. Additionally, harvest season has arrived. The irony of it all is what makes it so beautiful. Their demise now starts on the same platform that they forced themselves upon. They are now being questioned by the same individuals who were impressed by them. They are currently losing the success they formerly boasted about. That is the way karma operates. Before it reverses the script, pride does the heavy labor. Nobody needs to be exposed or argued with. That is already taking place without your assistance. The very structure that helped them ascend is now bringing them down. Their deceptive story is crumbling on its own, and when the deception becomes too loud, the truth always manages to surface. Karma was just waiting for the proper time to turn the tables on you, even though they believed they had buried you. And now is the time. Not only did what they took have repercussions, but it also had a countdown that abruptly ended. Third, your authority is ownership. Theirs was always a rental. Stealing power never lasts. For a while, someone may appear to be succeeding if they are gathering followers, money, attention, or positions they never should have. However, the majority of people are unaware that everything is rented. It's only transitory. There are strings attached, because you can't fake your way into true power, the type that's connected to legacy and purpose. It's inherited. Alignment, not manipulation, is how it is gained. This is incomprehensible to those who take from the selected. They believe they have the advantage. However, in reality, they are only occupying a spiritual area that is not theirs. They're wearing crowns that weren't designed for their heads, owning titles they weren't born with, and living in homes they didn't construct. Additionally, the lease eventually expires. Everything starts to go apart at that point. Support wanes. The favor ends. You can only survive on spiritual credit for so long before the bill arrives. Thus, the limelight fades. However, ownership has a distinct effect. Your authority is independent of status, popularity, or other people's acceptance when you are genuinely called and chosen. It has roots. Even in stillness, it grows. It's the type that is the norm and doesn't have to struggle to remain relevant. Doors open for you. You don't have to chase them. And what's yours returns with interest when the time is right. The individuals who attempted to take over your lane are finally understanding that they cannot keep what was never theirs. Regardless of the amount of influence they acquire for a season, it is fake. It is ostentatious, yet insubstantial. They are worn out from attempting to cling to something that was never theirs after trading tranquility for performance. In contrast, you are being set up for permanency rather than being postponed. Nothing you own will perish. You weren't intended to rent your power, thus it doesn't need to be enforced. You were destined to own it. Fourth, crowns that have been stolen are cursed. By slipping into a role they had no business handling, they believed they were outwitting fate and leveling up. However, there is a secret that no one discusses. Stolen crowns carry unspoken curses. For a while, they may appear to be doing well, smiling in photos, receiving accolades from the public. and being given chances that ought to have been yours. But below, everything is in disarray. Because taking something precious that was never meant for you hurts you rather than blesses you. Crowns are heavy, and that weight turns into punishment when it's intended for someone else. Their head, their personality, and their vocation were not intended for the crown. They are now being crushed from the inside out. By pushing their way into your position, they believed they were winning. However, all they did was inherit obligations they lack the grace to bear, stresses they were never prepared for, and wars that weren't theirs. The curse is that the title is given to them, but the anointing is not. Even worse, the fire gets hotter every day they keep it going. They are unable to sleep or remain calm. They are now enslaved to upholding a falsehood. Because you're continually modifying, justifying, and defending something that wasn't made for you, it's draining, and eventually, the crown they took begins to leave wounds. As the legitimate heir, you may feel abandoned, disregarded, or even deceived in the interim. Actually, though, you were being shielded from a curse they cast upon themselves. You weren't held up because you weren't prepared. Rather, you were shielded from entering a polluted environment. Their facade is now crumbling. It's a phony smile. The favor is eroding. Furthermore, the weight is intolerable. That crown they steal covertly, in public, it's becoming a fire. Because something that was intended to uplift you can never empower someone who obtained it via dishonest means. The throne is aware of its real ruler and does not deceive. Fifth, they were exposed for criticism. You were concealed for refining. What appeared to be rejection was actually a disguised kind of protection. Something more significant was going on behind the scenes when you were wondering why doors weren't opening, why people were ignoring you, and why your time never seemed to arrive. You weren't being overlooked. Rather, you were being held back and honed because you were too important to be released too soon, not because you weren't worthy. No stage can provide the type of silent preparation that takes place. You're being honed, put to the test, and spiritually prepared for longevity. In reality, what appeared to be a delay was divine planning. The people who pushed their way forward, stole jobs, imitated your work, and mirrored your spirit were being exposed in the meanwhile. Slowly, but not instantly. They were quickly raised, although on shaky ground. Although their accomplishment appeared remarkable, it was based on stolen designs and borrowed time. They avoided the procedure you had to go through. They rose without roots because they neglected the lessons, the pressure, and the trimming. Without a basis, anything that expands swiftly inevitably crumbles under stress. They were never really picked. They were cheered, loud, and visible, but they weren't in unison. They assumed positions that demanded a spiritual burden they didn't have. Everything they constructed is now collapsing. That exposure is judgment, not chance. Time, God, and the cosmos are all criticizing them for their hurried actions and attempted illegitimate inheritance claim. How about you? You're preserved, not left behind. Being concealed has a sacred quality. It indicates that others thought you were worth the wait. You were free to develop without any impurities. Now, you won't just show up with anticipation when your moment arrives, which is quickly approaching. You'll arrive with authority, tranquility, clarity, and depth. No rushing to prove oneself or to hold on to what is rightfully yours. The weight of it will have already shaped you as you step into it. They were revealed because falsehoods are always judged. Because splendor always follows reality, you were concealed. You're going far, but they went quickly. Sixth, they're paying the interest on their investment in your devastation. They did more than simply oppose you. They deliberately and strategically invested in your destruction. They invested effort in fabricating stories, generating diversions, laying traps, and disseminating information meant to destroy you. Some silently tainted your name while grinning in your face. In an attempt to outrun, outshine, or eliminate you, others have constructed whole identities. They weren't only envious, they were planning. However, they were unaware that every action they took against you amounted to a spiritual loan, and that interest has been accruing on that debt. Delays, misunderstandings, nervousness, broken relationships, and closed doors are all signs of that desire. They believed that by destroying you, they were creating something strong. However, they were just borrowing time and accruing unaffordable repercussions. We are aware of such form of sabotage. The spiritual dimension keeps score differently, even if they are deceiving people. There was a price for each attack. Each falsehood increased the weight. Every fictitious chance they stole from you resulted in a debt associated with your identity. The collectors have finally arrived. In every unpaid tab, life calls. The favor they obtained by manipulation is vanishing. Their former coalitions are disintegrating. Because justice always comes for what's imbalanced. The same instruments they used to attempt to harm you are now turning against them, not because you're getting even. Furthermore, curses that are directed against a chosen person don't go away. Instead, they reverberate. Because you didn't have to battle them, this is even more potent. You didn't have to compete, clap back, or expose yourself. Despite the discomfort, you continued to develop, heal, and move. They're paying while you're rising because of this. They believed their advancement was your ruin. Rather, their punishment was your survival. Their tab is due this season, and the invoice doesn't include mercy. Seventh, anointing can only be mimicked. It cannot be taken. Talent and anointing are two different things. Talent may be purchased, trained, or even replicated. However, anointing is divine. It's the power that moves rooms and breaks bonds without you having to speak a word. It's the unseen energy that underlies your voice, presence, and impact. The ugly reality is that some individuals attempted to imitate you after noticing something in you. They imitated your delivery, copied your thoughts, studied your rhythm, and even stole your words. They failed to understand, however, that anything that was birthed in fire cannot be faked. They were proficient at impersonation, which allowed them to deceive large crowds, create platforms, and cause some individuals to doubt their authenticity. However, they were simply noisy and never anointed. Loud does not equate to called. They mimicked your speech, your movements, and even your shadow. However, their signature was never acknowledged by heaven. You had presence, they had performance. The illusion is dissolving, which is what gives this moment such strength. The cheers are dying off. You can only keep up a performance for so long before the pressure of a genuine purpose demands verification, which is why the duplicates are breaking. Imitation folds when that occurs. That's what's going on right now. The people who attempted to become you without having to pay the same price as you are crumbling under the weight of their theft. The oil is gone, but the platforms remain. The conviction is hollow, but the charisma is still there. The best part is that you never had to demonstrate that they weren't real. You didn't have to proclaim your truth or defend your lane. The anointing is self-explanatory. It shifts instead of screaming. And now suddenly, people are realizing the difference. They are beginning to distinguish between what is noise and what is genuine. They are seeing who bears the burden and who is only skilled at carrying a script. Though it might draw attention, impersonation cannot maintain a legacy. The genuine ones are already emerging. While others were busy copying your gifts, you were becoming indisputable. So you're not going to compete, but to reclaim. Furthermore, the Spirit never confounds the chosen with the counterfeit. Eighth, spiritual justice, not just financial riches, is what is meant by generational wealth. The term inheritance usually conjures up images of wealth, goods, or property. However, inheritance is more profound for those who are selected. What's in your lineage is more important than what's in your bank account. It's the spiritual equity that has been accumulated over many generations, the whispered prayers, the struggles, the lessons learned from suffering, and the promises that your ancestors made but never lived to see come true. The true riches lies in that. And other individuals attempted to take control of it without realizing the gravity of what they were touching because they were envious or ignorant. Not understanding that what was destined for you was precisely created with your lineage, your path, and your vocation in mind, they attempted to access your spiritual legacy rather than simply stealing your ideas or opportunities. As if it were simply another chance to seize, they gained access to something precious. They believed they were being shrewd, but they were entering areas where their spirit was not permitted to enter. This type of inheritance is carried rather than merely passed along. Additionally, it becomes poisonous in your hands if you lack the necessary spiritual alignment or power. Because of this, everything they attempted to construct using the stolen property is now falling apart, not because you're cursing them, but rather because abused inheritance falls apart on its own. It has accountability built in. They were unaware that legacy influence is unfakeable. They failed to see that your unclaimed successes were sealed assignments rather than merely possibilities. They attempted to imitate that knowledge, which was developed through suffering and quiet. They believed it could be replicated in a day, but it was not possible. And now they can no longer bear the burden of it, not because it was cursed, but because it was misused. What was supposed to bless you is breaking people. They desecrated in addition to stealing. Additionally, the consequences includes interior breakdown, disorientation, tiredness, and emptiness, in addition to public failure. You're entering what has always been yours, which includes not only riches, but also knowledge and power. Because inheritance is about carrying rather than grabbing. Additionally, no thief can fake that. 9. It's your time now. Their ascent was based on your tardiness. You were late, so they got up. Although it's a painful reality, it exists. Every time you were impeded, ignored, or marginalized, someone else was making progress, sometimes by taking shortcuts, and other times by entering areas that weren't theirs. Their achievement appeared to be evidence that you were out of luck. The underlying reality, however, is that your delay was divine calibration rather than rejection. In ways they could not have predicted, you were being prepped, aligned, and sculpted. Their ascent, however, was predicated on borrowed momentum and a precarious base that relied on your absence. Their ascension was unsteady and unsustainable, supported by fabricated stories and missed chances. They took it while you were still getting ready. They didn't earn it with honesty or patience. However, being ready is more important than being refused when it comes to divine timing. It's what separates being given a crown you can wear from being given a throne you are meant to hold. The moment has arrived for the tables to do more than simply spin. They are now violently flipping. Under strain, what they constructed upon your delay is crumbling. The attention that was previously focused on them is changing, revealing the flaws and the lies. They always had borrowed time, and now they are running out of it. They saw your quiet as a sign of weakness. However, it was actually strength. You weren't late. Rather, you were preparing for the day when your ascent would be not just apparent, but indisputable. This is about getting back what was always yours, not about retaliation or resentment. Their climb was a brief diversion. The primary route is your fate. The cosmos respects preparedness and purpose. It is not unconcerned with time. It's your moment to ascend now, not subtly, but with might. The wait was never a dead end. Rather, it was a prelude to an unavoidable comeback. Your tardiness was the foundation of their ascent, but your destiny will be the foundation of your ascent. And fate does not simply show up, it rules. Number 10. There is a boomerang effect associated with each stolen blessing. It's not simply a simple loss for you when someone takes a blessing that was intended for you. It's a spiritual obligation for them. Blessings are energy with purpose and direction, not merely presents. Anything that is stolen without permission has an internal monitoring mechanism, a sort of spiritual GPS that makes sure it doesn't simply disappear. Rather, it recirculates, sometimes silently at first, and other times with devastating power. The surprise lies in the way it returns. The thief faces repercussions in addition to receiving your approval. The weight of your legitimate claim, your mission, and your calling are all carried by the energy they attempted to drain. When they bear that weight, it doesn't get lighter. Rather, it gets heavier, entangling them in a vicious cycle of retaliation they didn't choose. They believed that by taking what was intended for you, they were getting an edge. Instead, they set off a boomerang, which is currently returning at full speed. Blessings become curses. They bear the weight of the stolen item as well as the repercussions of the crime. Those who received your blessings are left to cope with the consequences, which include bewilderment, failure, a loss of favor, strained relationships, and a lingering sense of unease. Energy that has been taken cannot remain stolen, according to a spiritual rule. It constantly comes back, and it does it more than once. In order to ensure that no robbery goes unpunished, the cosmos maintains equilibrium. Behind the scenes, justice is being served, and what was taken is being restored, even if you might not see the whole picture at first. Therefore, they unwittingly set themselves up for failure while believing they were benefiting from stealing from you. Your lost benefits are returning with greater vigor, and they bring with them an irresistible revenge. It's a reckoning, not merely a return. Number 11. They exercised your power rather than merely robbing you. They didn't simply remove a piece of your life when they took what was meant for you. They unintentionally set off a profound metamorphosis. Their larceny triggered a deeper aspect of your spirit, rather than being a haphazard act of jealousy or greed. Pain was what forced you to develop, not comfort. You were more observant, smarter, and passionately protective of your goal when your blessings were taken away. Your power was established by the same act that was intended to shatter you. You developed the ability to see through the disguises of those who opposed you. You didn't have discernment before. It was developed in the crucible of grief and betrayal. You developed the ability to distinguish between real opportunity and phony favor, and you no longer take things at face value. Spiritual understanding like that is a weapon, and it was the fight, not the ease that ignited it. That's the classic tale. Now you're not only about getting back what was taken, you're entering a far bigger role, that of monarch. Regaining what is rightfully yours and taking complete control of your future are two different things. You gain authority because you have weathered the storm, fought through the battle, and come out on top. It is earned in the furnace of betrayal and grief. It is not given. The king or queen inside of you was awakened by those who took from you, who believed they were exploiting you. These days, you're leading with purpose and strength rather than victimization or reactivity. Now that you have a better understanding of the battlefield, you can confidently dominate your region. Both the theft and your ascent were calculated. Unaware of it, they unlocked the door to your power. And now, you're not just surviving, you're governing. Number 12. They were protected by their connection to you, but now they are vulnerable. Being near to you gives others a kind of safety they don't completely comprehend, especially if you're someone who has been selected or destined for greatness. They are under your spiritual protection, your influence, and your shadow, since they are close to you. It's similar to being within a fortress that they did not construct, but nonetheless used to their advantage. They were protected because of this proximity, shielded from the full weight of their deeds, from exposure, and from the repercussions. Because they were protected by your presence, your reputation, and your elegance, they were able to move, talk, and even lie. However, they made a crucial error when they chose to betray you, stealing what was rightfully yours, whispering falsehoods, or working against your destiny. They cut off the very shield that protected them by betraying confidence. That protection was a borrowed shield that was contingent on alignment and allegiance. It was never theirs to keep forever. The shield vanished as soon as that relationship was severed, and they were left standing in places where they had before felt untouchable and vulnerable. This exposure has a spiritual component in addition to being social and emotional. They are now subject to criticism in the areas where they previously controlled narratives, manipulated circumstances, and avoided responsibility. Their actual selves, their motives, and their secrets are coming to light. The shield that formerly prevented people from seeing their own shortcomings is no longer there. Additionally, the same networks that aided in their ascent are also contributing to their decline. Their weakness is evident without your shielding, and they are now dealing with the repercussions they were before avoiding. For them, being near you was a strategic advantage rather than only a convenience. It gave them a sense of impunity in their operations. Betrayal, however, is about what they lost, not simply what they took. They were no longer able to conceal themselves behind your power, their safe haven, or their cloak of invisibility. Every action they do is now scrutinized. Every partnership they rely on feels precarious, and they lose every chance they attempt to seize. Since your power was derived from your calling and integrity, rather than from their presence, you are still shielded and protected in the meantime. Their decision to betray directly led to their exposure. And that publicity is strong. It is the universe's method of exposing the truth and removing the disguise. The harsh light of responsibility now shines on what was formerly concealed by your darkness. They were essentially protected by their access to you. After cutting that passage, they left the citadel and into the open, where they are now completely defenseless, exposed, and disintegrating in unexpected ways. Number 13. Those who are concealed always come back as judges rather than victims. For individuals who are concealed, ignored, or delayed, the reality is that their homecoming is about returning with unquestionable power. not about appealing for respect or justice. You were never intended to be a victim or a footnote, despite the fact that the world may have written you off as such. You are being ruthlessly, subtly, and profoundly prepped for the day when your mere presence will be the deciding factor. The suffering you endured while you were ignored, undervalued, or deceived wasn't in vain. It was a covert sharpening, not a setback. You were becoming stronger and more clear-headed, while others hurried on, driven by deceit or quick cuts. You go from being someone who seeks justice to someone who embodies it as a result of that growth. Your achievement, your presence, and your unwavering tranquility will speak for you. You don't need to argue or raise your voice. The same individuals who disregarded you, those who embezzled your wealth, made fun of your endurance, or presumed you would remain silent, will be subject to a silent but potent condemnation. Your ascent will be the surprise they never anticipated, so they won't need to hear a word from you. The fact that you're standing taller, unflinching, and triumphant will be the yardstick by which their deception, sabotage, and thievery are evaluated. Regaining your power and living so completely that your presence becomes the ultimate testament is what this is all about, not retaliation or resentment. You're returning as a judge, providing the unquestionable truth via your achievement and integrity, not as a victim begging for pity. That type of justice is also considerably more potent than any dispute or conflict. Thus, keep in mind that you're reigning, not merely returning when the time comes. Not only do the hidden ones live, but they come back to pass judgment, and their authority and intensity establish the tone for the courtroom. The first individuals to discover they were never in charge are the same ones who questioned you. You always were. Number 14. Restoration is retribution with interest. It is never one-to-one. Restoration is not about getting back exactly what was lost in a straightforward, equitable exchange. The world expects fairness like that. However, the process of divine repair is distinct. It's about correction as much as balance. You're not just getting back what's legitimately yours when it's taken. You're getting back more than you ever had. The people who stole from you are losing far more than simply what they took. They are losing what they believed to be inviolable. This is a higher kind of justice intended to make amends in the most significant manner possible. It is not retaliation in the narrow sense. They were unaware that they were committing to a correction so drastic that it would affect every aspect of their life when they attempted to circumvent the system by taking your inheritance. Restoration with interest implies that they intentionally suffer excessive loss. It conveys a message about the spiritual rules governing justice and truth, in addition to what they took. They may hold on to what they have because they believe that some aspects of their reality are secure. However, this divine judgment applies to everything. They encouraged collapse the more they clung to what wasn't theirs. Their sense of security was a figment of their imagination. In the meantime, you are reaping the benefits of what was taken from you in greater measure. Greater wealth, more power, greater influence, and greater tranquility. Restoration can never be a one-to-one transaction because of this. It is intended to rectify a cosmic imbalance rather than merely cure wounds. Not only is the balance shifting back in your favor, but it is shifting so drastically that it upends the fictitious order they attempted to establish. It is simultaneously a blessing and a reproach. Therefore, don't anticipate a tidy return while considering repair. Anticipate interest-based retribution. They will lose more than they took, and you will gain more than you lost. This is the inexorable process of divine correction in action. What was taken from you was never really theirs to retain in the vast scheme of fate. It was a borrowed item, a transient delusion that was never strong enough to defeat the force of your legitimate heritage. The attempts to discredit you and take what was rightfully yours have only sparked forces they cannot understand. Your change has been sparked by every act of treachery, every delay, and every attempt to imitate your special anointing. These experiences have sharpened your spirit, awakened your authority, and prepared you for an impending yet overpowering rising. This path is about reclaiming your purpose with a power so deep that it leaves no space for doubt or denial. It is not about small-minded retaliation or meaningless triumphs. Not only are the tables shifting, but they are flipping with a force that reveals phony aspirations and silence false narratives. The same individuals who formerly flourished under your shadow are now at risk, vulnerable and collapsing due to their own dishonesty. They were always subject to protection. They entered the light of reality when facades fall away and true character emerges the instant they broke their bond with your covering. You are entering something far bigger than repair. It is a heavenly corrective that enters the domain of inexorable justice and goes beyond fairness. You are inheriting more benefits, authority forged in fire, and a legacy that no one can copy or put out. You are not just getting back what was taken. Your sheer being serves as the ultimate verdict, and your very presence turns into the courtroom where those who questioned you are quietly judged. So get up without thinking and live life to the fullest. You have the opportunity to dominate this season, not as a victim, but as a winner. Not as a pauper, but as a king. Their hands may have been scorched by the stolen crowns, but yours is being anointed with strength, knowledge, and an unwavering serenity. Now is your time to take back, to rebuild, to rule supremely. Because the selected ones rewrite history rather than merely surviving it. And your tale of fortitude and divine favor is only getting started. If this message struck a chord with you and you're prepared to take your position, don't miss the following step. In order to be the first to hear the truth that wakes and empowers, click the subscribe button and enable alerts. Like this video if it made you feel anything. Leave a comment with your views or a tale. Together, we are creating a community of fighters. Additionally, remember to tell everybody who needs to know that their delay is only a prelude to a strong return. This movement is fueled by your support. We're unstoppable when we work together. Let's get up.